Did you know that your mind doesn't distinguish between the real and the imagined? Did you know that your brain can't tell the difference between waking reality and dreaming? A perfect example is the wet dream. There's no body there, but you still have a physical experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Magical Writing Podcast. I am Joseph Sale, and my co-host is SC Mendes. And together we are going to be teaching you some of the esoteric and occult principles that will help you become a better writer, hopefully. Last week, we introduced the broad theme of mentalism, and we zeroed in on paradigms and self-limiting beliefs and how they can hamper us from getting to what we really want. So we talked about how our subconscious minds become programmed, they go on autopilot, and we act in our everyday life without really thinking about the program. So as adults, we become stuck with all our quirks and habits that may or may not be helping us, and especially with our writing. So is this who we are forever, or can we change, Mr. Mendes?
Well, thank you. I like to say we can change 100%. I know that it's true. We can change, but again, that's another blockage that I think a lot of people have to get over. We spent the last episode talking a lot about traumas and kind of childhood experiences and how those program us before our conscious mind can really say, no, that's silly. No, don't think that way. But there was probably two things that we left out, or that maybe possibly I left out that I didn't mention so much, that program us every day and they're constant. And the first one is the media. And, you know, there's good media, there's bad media, but there's not really good and bad, because we said it's all subjective to what, you deem it, right? However, you can't say, though, that the media we consume every day is not shaping our world. It really is. And there was a movie that I watched a long time ago, and it was called Wag the Dog. It had Robert De Niro in it. And if no one's watched it, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, and I think Woody Harrelson is in it too.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good movie. But to boil it down, as I remember it correctly, the essence of it was they need to swing votes a certain way. And this was back in, I want to say it was a 2000 movie, but I'm not 100% sure. So it was nothing that went on recently in our country, but they wanted to swing some votes, and they needed a hero, and they wanted a war hero for this particular campaign. And so Robert De Niro called upon Dustin Hoffman, who's a movie director and can never, ever talk about this thing that they did, but they faked a war. And they used green screens, and they had a little tiny country that maybe no one had ever heard of. I can't remember the name of it now, of course, right? No one can remember it, but there was that war there, and they showed some video clips, and they showed the fighting, and they had a hero, and they had a victim, and that all was manufactured. And that really first put the idea in my head. And then in real life, in our country, I want to say it was 2003, there was the invasion of Iraq. And at the time, I was watching the news along with everyone else. I was a young man. I was a little nervous because I had friends who, after high school, they'd wanted to join, the services. So I'm watching this, and I see a scene where it looks like there's maybe 15 or 20, people in the country, like obviously native Iraqis, and they tear down this statue, and they're hitting it with their shoes, and they look really happy and excited that America's there. However, the camera never panned out. I don't know if that was just 20 people in a village they paid money to do that to. I don't know if they brought their own statue. I have no idea. I've never been to these countries. I have to believe whatever the media tells me, unless I get a conflicting story from somewhere else. And I think a lot of us are stuck with that. We can't go all around. And it's beautiful that we say we know what's going on in different places and different countries and with different people. But at the end of the day, do we really? Or do we just accept what we're shown? So the media is huge on that one.
They say that a picture paints 1,000 words, but unfortunately, pictures can be extremely treacherous. Those 1,000 words may not be entirely reliable. It's a very low-key example to faking an entire war, but there was a photo of Donald Trump and Kanye West. In fact, there were two photos published in two different magazines of the same big gala event. Mm-hmm. And in one, the men are arm in arm, smiling, beaming, and in the other, they are looking so stern and severe, and as if neither one of them wants to be there, and they actually hate each other, but they've just kind of pretended for political reasons to be friends. And both of those pictures were clearly taken within seconds of each other. And which one is the real one? Is the joy fake, or have they just been asked a really horrible question in the other one that makes them look stern, but actually they were glad to be there? Like you don't know, and you never will know unless you were there. So even something as simple as how we perceive, certain individuals politically, one picture can change that.
Absolutely. That is a huge one. And I've heard, and I've heard also too, that sometimes they'll have pictures like you're talking about, and then the headline just changes it a bit. And between the headline and that stern face, like you said, you now are like, oh yeah, I really don't care for this person, or I really do like this person. Oh, I was proved right. I was proved wrong. And we tend to always search out the thing that is going to sit well with our beliefs, right? So if we have this belief about Kanye or whoever, and then we see the picture and the headline, we go, yep, I was right. And very seldom do we search out the other angle or the other side. And yet we always want someone else to look for it for us, right? Oh, that was a bad picture. You caught me when I was frowning, or you caught me like in that one split second. Oh, you're right. We did. I'm sorry. We'll take another picture or whatever. But we expect that benefit of the doubt for ourselves. And yet most of us won't give it to anyone else, which is disappointing. But that's something all these magicians and writers should be taking note of. Try to break down your own what do you believe, which leads us to the second input of our subconscious mind that I don't think I talked about much. And that was ourselves, you who's listening right now. We're so prone to say things have happened to us, and I'm this way because of things that happened to us. And yet now here we are as adults, and we're using our words every day, and we are literally programming ourselves by the things we say, especially when we say things we don't mean. And I know we don't believe we do that, but we do, myself included. I am not above this. And it can be something as simple as it's Monday morning, you have to go into work, and you just aren't happy. And someone says, hey man, well, it's Monday. You're like, yeah, it's Monday, whatever. And we just kind of have this dialogue. We almost become friends with a coworker over hating this imaginary day of the week, this thing called Monday. But you almost don't want to say, yes, it's a great day, because you don't want to be the guy at the office who rolls in when everyone's sleepy-eyed, they're barely getting their computers turned on, and you're like chipper and, hey, it's a great day. We're going to do wonderful things today, team. Let's go. People want to stab you in the eye. They're like, shut up, man. It's way too early to be happy. Yeah. So you put on a fake persona and you tell yourself, no, I know it's going to be a good day. But what you really say is, it's Monday. You're programming yourself because, as you said, the mind doesn't really know if it's real or imagined. And so if we say these things that we don't really believe, we're programming ourselves. And in fact, I don't want to take it too far, but I used to tell my students, I'm like, all these things that you think are real, they just don't really exist. They're not. They're a social construct that we all agreed upon. And because we all agree, we all kind of unspoken agreement that this is the way things are. And we just keep that status quo. And this could be something as silly as or I guess it's not silly, but money. I don't know if our viewers have ever really thought about money before, but it's literally just paper. There's really no difference between that and sticks or stones or berries. It's just a placeholder for value. And we've all agreed that we'll accept in this country the American dollar. And now we're just starting to see these things change. Some people will accept cryptocurrency, but you can't go into McDonald's and buy your hamburger with cryptocurrency.
With Bitcoin.
Or with Bitcoin. They haven't agreed to that yet. If enough people agree to something, it suddenly becomes the new norm. It becomes real. That's magic. We're literally making something up. And so if enough of us believe in it, your reality will change. The good news is if you want your personal reality change, you don't need to rely on that many people. You could simply change it yourself if you have the belief. And the belief is what rewires our brain. And we call it neuroplasticity. So to answer in a roundabout way your question, can we change? Yes. Science calls it neuroplasticity. We on this channel, we're going to call it magic. But it works simply because your subconscious brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined.
Talking about the power of self narratives, there was a book that came out recently which was called "You Are the Placebo," and there's some absolutely incredible research and stories in there about the power of the placebo effect. And we mentioned the wet dream, which in a weird way is a form of placebo, like a complete mind over matter situation. So I wonder if you could just unpack that a bit and show the correlation between these things.
Yeah, the You Are the Placebo Effect is currently on my Kindle right now. A buddy of mine, dear friend, said it is a fantastic book. I think it was by Dr. Joe Dispenza, I think, yes. Or maybe it is. Okay. Yeah. The placebo effect is huge. I think for me, a lot of us, when we hear placebo effect, we automatically think about the medical examples, yes. Controlled groups. And so they don't tell you, basically, you have two groups. Supposedly, both people are suffering from the same kind of ailment, and they'll give the real medicine to one group and they'll give a placebo to another. My students in the classroom had trouble visualizing that. So I'm like, okay, the movie It. Did you guys see the movie It? And the kid, I forget his name, but he has the inhaler. Yeah. And the girl at one point says, that inhaler isn't real. That's a placebo. And yet every time this kid had this asthma attack, he would take his inhaler, and it doesn't matter that it was just fake air going in there, basically. Yeah. It made him calm down. And the people in the control study who didn't get the medicine, quote unquote, right? They got the placebo. A lot of them will just say, oh yeah, I do. I feel a lot better. Thank you so much. Because we have a belief in Western society a lot of times that if we're given medicine, it will help us. That doctor is going to help us. And that in turn is a very subconscious belief too. And now it doesn't work for everyone, because how many times do people say, oh, I don't trust doctors because a relative died under care. And so that white lab coat and that stethoscope, it does not inspire the same confidence that it does in other people. For another person, they'll walk into an office, and the minute the doctor tells them, they take it as gospel. And they're like, oh, this is great. I feel so much better. When really the doctor didn't do a whole lot possibly for you. I mean, I'm not saying that they didn't. Medicine is amazing. I've been helped myself, right? But there's something more to it. Some other examples of the placebo effect that I love doing in the classroom was, I don't know if this is a movie you've seen in the UK, but it was called The Sandlot, and it was a baseball movie.
Oh no, I've not seen that.
Baseball is our major pastime. Long story short, the only part that matters to you is these kids want to run faster. And so if you ask somebody here, the shoes that make you run faster in this movie, they're called PF Flyers. And, as a kid, you put these things on, you're going to run faster. You're going to jump higher. Me, myself, personally, I had a pair of shoes. I don't know what they were, but I remember there was a cheetah on them. I could Velcro them. I literally could run faster. Yeah, maybe it was that. And you could run faster, but it wasn't real. It was you doing it. That's the placebo effect. The one last one is, I remember a study that I read once, and basically they took an energy drink, but I don't think they told anyone it was an energy drink. And they said, this is something that will stimulate your mind. It'll get you ready for a test. You'll do better. And, the people that drank it did better on the test. I guess this is the long-winded way of saying that if you believe something, it's real for you. And the placebo effect is getting what I want to say is going to be positive changes, positive physical changes in your body based off something that's only in your head. And it's not real, and yet it is. I guess that's the only other way I can say it. I'll do one last pop culture reference. Again, I don't know if it's in the UK, but Seinfeld was a very popular show in the 90s. Yeah. And there's a character named George Costanza, and he's a real a heel, we'll call him, he's the character who he's good at lying. He loves lying. He lies to women. He tries to get dates this way. And I forget the setup, but Jerry has to basically, he's the other main character, Jerry Seinfeld. He has to tell a lie. And he's like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not going to be good at it. I think he's even got to take a lie detector test. This woman who's dating him, has some kind of dad who knows the test. And I'm sure a viewer will say, oh no, that's totally wrong. But come on, subconscious mind, it's been years. But I'll never forget the line that George says to him. He goes, okay, Jerry, you want to lie? Remember this. It's not a lie if you believe it. And I was like, whoa, that's super powerful. All these gauges we have in metrics to tell if someone is lying, the person has to know that they're lying for these metrics to work. If you believe it's true, it's not a lie. And I guess that's what we want for everybody. We want to almost, God, it sounds so terrible when you say it like this, right? Lie to ourselves so much, but in a positive, powerful way that we believe it and we transform ourselves. We're not going to lie in the regard that it hurts anyone else or does something detrimental to ourselves, but literally we are going to change and rewire our brains with neuroplasticity and the placebo effect until we believe it. And the physical responses our body takes will be the success of our book or in our life.
Wow, that's awesome. We've already given people some great examples, but one has just come to my mind, which I think you'll particularly enjoy as a teacher, because I think in the US, they did a study, a long-term, longitudinal experimental study, where they picked a group of teachers and students across, I can't remember what states it was in now, but essentially they said to the teachers, look, you are the top, we've looked at all the stats, you are the top performing teachers, in your state. And we have selected for you the top students in their age group. What we want you to do is to just see how far you can get these students, see how far you can push them in a way, how deep can you go, how quickly can you develop people, what level can you actually get them to. And they, over a course of a year, they took these students and they achieved absolutely insane results. And they were basically like a whole kind of school. I mean, you guys call it, what is it, like middle school, high school?
Oh yeah, we have elementary, middle school, and then high school.
Yeah, we have a slightly different way of thinking about it. So I tend to think in British terms, but I think it was like, they were like above elementary going into middle school level, but at like, so it was like amazing results. And at the end, it was revealed that the students and teachers had been chosen at random. None of them were like special or high performing, but because they believed they were, they performed beyond exceptionally and completely shifted the paradigm of, well, you're this age, so you're at this level. It's really, as you say, amazing that it was purely the fact that they believed the lie, that they were the top teachers in the United States.
That's a beautiful lie when it comes to that, right?
Absolutely.
That's a great example. Yours is much more positive than my beating the lie detector with Jerry Seinfeld. That's a very positive example. I like that one.
Well, I think you have to start somewhere. Like I think you said in our interview over on the Patreon that, a lot of people get into self-help and magic for reasons of love and money, right?
Yes.
There's a man or woman we want to seduce, or there's a pot of gold that we want to find. And so that's the necessary initial step. And I guess we become more altruistic as we go deeper on the path, hopefully.
And that's good that you brought up, because right now, if someone's just starting out, they are probably going to have a lot of desires and wants of that, the recognition. If we're talking about selling books, I mean, we're obviously going to sell them for money, right? We want something. And so, yes, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm glad you brought that up. As long as people are doing their magic, we'll say, it does eventually harm no one. That's the goal that we're looking for in all this magic. Even if you want something, this is a paradigm you should have, is that you never have to take it from somebody else. So even if you're after the sex and the this, as long as everyone is consenting, right? The people who are buying your books wanted to buy them and you're providing the service. The people that you're meeting or seducing, it's going to be a mutual thing. So we're just going to get you to that level where you feel comfortable taking the step. And then down the road, yes, if you have this amazing self-transformation and you may be more altruistic, as you said, that is great too. But yeah, it definitely, it's all that belief.
I guess when you don't have that view that it's coming from the universe rather than from somebody else, that's when you go into black magic, basically, right? Like where you're like, well, I have this ability, so now I'm going to use it to dominate other people, rather than as you say, have mutually beneficial connections, or but that's a topic for another time.
Right. Yes. And we will go to baneful magic sometime, I'm sure. It's good to glaze over it at least. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned about wants and desires, and so obviously this kind of placebo effect is an attempt to manifest these wants and desires. So how do we go about that? You mentioned about these narratives we tell ourselves. What do we do? Do we say to ourselves, I want to write a bestseller, or is it something deeper?
Yeah. So I would say, don't ever say, I want to write a bestseller, because right then and there, people don't realize it, but that is programming your mind to realize you don't have this thing. You don't have the thing that you want. And for the placebo effect to work, and there's the paradox, right? For the placebo effect to work, you have to believe that it is happening, that you have it, it's the truth. And now someone could tell themselves, I guess, yeah, no, but I really believe I'm going to get it. Let's not even do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to two things. We're going to do affirmations, and we're going to combine those with mental visualization. And so when you are doing these affirmations, I want it to be in the present tense. I mean, you can do them lots of different ways, but the few guidelines I would have is, one, do it in the present tense. Act as if you already have the thing. Just say that, because remember, the brain doesn't know the difference. And we're going to eventually start to hammer that into the brain. So you want to write it in the present tense. The second thing, say the words, I am. I am is such a powerful statement. I think in that initial interview, we even talked about it being in the Bible a couple times, right?
Yeah. I am.
Yeah. I am. And this comes back to what we say every day, the little stuff. Oh, I hate Mondays, or, oh, I can't do that. I hate being on the phone. Well, if your job relies on you to be on the phone to be a top seller, if you're, a telemarketer, maybe you're not a telemarketer, but if you're selling something, you have to be able to communicate. If you say I'm terrible at talking to people, this is a much better example, but yet you have to sell a book to people at a convention. You don't want to say I'm terrible at talking to people. So don't ever say those things, but I am. And then I would say linking an emotion to it. So if it's the bestseller, oh, here's another one too. You don't have to be, your brain needs kind of targets, right? So to just say you're a bestseller, I guess my next question would be like, well, what does that look like? Are you a New York Times bestseller, or are you more about like, what is it for gold records? I think it's 500,000 you have to sell. Do you want to sell a certain number? So a possible example would be, I am so excited to sell 1 million copies of fill in the blank book, right? In 2022. I'm so thankful and happy that I did that thing. That becomes your affirmation that you say, not that I want to, but that it already did. And of course, the first thing is your conscious mind is going to say, that's freaking impossible, dude. You're not selling 1 million copies right now. Your mom and your 5 buddies bought your book. So how is that possible? So maybe you don't want to say 2022, because you also have to not completely shoot yourself down. So maybe you start a little bit broader. I just want to sell 1 million copies of this book. And I'm so excited and thankful that, sorry, I did the same thing. I want to, right? I am so excited and thankful I sold 1 million copies of The Order of Eternal Sleep, which is the name of one of my books, right? So, but that's it. That becomes your statement. Maybe don't tag on the year time frame or something else. That way your brain has a little bit more time in the beginning to believe you. Because if you jump into this water too deep and too fast, and you know deep down that you can't swim, these won't work. So let's build in a little bit of a buffer. So that's the first thing. You need to write these affirmations. The second thing is, we talked about the visualization, I think last time. We want to work in visualization to bring in the second part of your brain, which is the mammalian part. So just to backtrack, these affirmations, we're going to repeat them over and over again every day, at least 2 times a day. This is going to work on that reptilian part of your brain, that part that learns just by doing, right? The habit over and over and over again. So now instead of saying, I hate Mondays, I don't do this, I am so thankful that I am confident in all of my public speakings, right? Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. I'm so confident. And then as you go to the conventions, your brain is going to start to say, oh yeah, you are confident in this. So, or, oh, you do sell 1 million books, or, oh, this. So that's the reptilian part. The second part we're going to work on is the mammalian. Now, you kind of started to do that when you linked in an emotion to your affirmation, because remember, the mammalian is all about the feeling that we connect to everything. So we're going to close our eyes and we are going to visualize the end result of whatever the statement was. And so if it's about selling 1 million books, what would that look like if we were incorporating all of our senses? So maybe it looks like other famous authors mentioning your name. They're like, wow, did you check out the new book by Joseph Sale? It's amazing. Or maybe it's seeing their tweet. You know how everyone likes to take a screenshot of that Stephen King tweet or that Clive Barker. It's like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, that's so cool. And that might be all that it is. You're going to see that tweet and then you're going to have the emotion. What would it be like if your favorite author spoke praise of your name? And that's what you visualize. So visualize the tweet. Visualize the interview, visualize the book sale. So I'm so thankful and grateful to have sold 1 million copies. Well, if you're an author, you know what your book report looks like, right? You see the little bar graph, bar graph going through the roof, or see it in increments. Like it was this on day 1, day 2, day 3, and it keeps rising. See that. And as your mind is closed, you're going to hear, you're going to see, you're going to feel the excitement. And all of us, we know what it's like to be excited. I don't care what your life has been. At some point, you had a great moment where you felt loved, you felt confidence, you felt excitement. You need to be an actor. You need to channel that at that moment and visualize it. You need to feel the finished product of the book in your hands. Don't visualize yourself pounding away at the keyboard and hours of editing. I don't want people to do that. If you want to do that, great, you can, if that's something you desire. But no, I don't even want that. I want you to see the end product. Feel the book in your hands, feel it, hear the pages, smell the new book smell. If success to you is not selling a certain amount of copies, but having a certain amount of money, that was always big with my students because I worked in, a less privileged school, I would say. So for them, it was about feeling that cold, hard cash and smelling it, and hearing the crinkle. You bring all those things in. That's your visualization. That's your placebo effect. So now we're working on the reptilian brain, we're working on the mammalian brain, and now we're also bringing in the frontal lobes or the neocortex, because for you to envision these things that haven't happened, you have to use that newer part of your brain. I think you brought it up last time. Animals don't really have that capacity. I mean, they have that part of the brain, but it's not developed like ours. The dogs don't envision the future. They don't envision them loving on you again when you come home. They just do it, right? Because they're in that moment. But you can visualize something that doesn't exist and bring it into your reality. This book that you've written, you haven't really wrote it, but you're not going to tell your mind that. You're going to see it, you're going to feel it, and those are all the 3 parts of your brain kind of working together all in one.
That's absolutely amazing. I love how you link that back to the 3 tiers of the brain and engaging all of them, and the 5 senses as well. That's really, really powerful. So, I mean, if visualization is a topic in itself, and it's a really important, powerful skill, and actually a lot of, not just magicians, but self-help gurus, business leaders talk about the power and importance of visualizing things before they happen. So is there a particular exercise you'd like to recommend to improve our visualization powers?
I'm glad you brought up other professions too. One that I've always looked at was athletes. Athletes do the same thing. So, if they're, there are 1 million studies. Everyone, if you don't take our word for it, go find these studies, but they're ones where basketball players, some will practice in the gym over and over that free throw shot. The other ones just practiced it in their mind. They saw it making. They have the same kind of gains. Same thing with exercises. You can see physical changes in the muscle fibers just by visualizing that you're doing an exercise and contracting the muscle in your mind. So all professions. what is there a best? There isn't. And I think what we should do is have an episode where we definitely practice on a couple. The first one I'll do, and it's before visualization. This is more for your thoughts, and I'll bring in some of from our interview a long time ago. We talked a bit about secret societies, or what I like to call them is they're not actually secret societies because everyone seems to know who we're talking about. True secret societies, you don't know. They operate as a very small group. They have a name that they don't reveal to anyone else, and they do whatever magical workings they want. But then there are ones that everyone tends to know, and they're not really secret societies. They're what I like to call societies with secrets. They have a couple of secrets. But all these groups that we tend to talk about in these whispers, when they meet, there is always at least one person, if not, depending on the group, two people who guard the door to that meeting room. Nothing ever enters into that meeting room or leaves that meeting room without permission of the presiding officer who is over the entire meeting. If there's a knock at the door, they will tell someone what to do, how to answer it, all that stuff. And a lot of people will tell you that these meeting rooms are set up not for any secret purpose, but they're actually a representation of your own body, your own temple, your own mind. And there's a very important lesson to be learned there, is that don't let anything into your mind that you haven't approved by that higher presiding part of you. When people say, oh, it's a crappy Monday, if you don't want to believe that, don't let that thought in, and send a message down from the rest and say, oh, is anything wrong? I've been having such a great day. Maybe I could help you with something. And you can just turn that script around on someone. Don't allow somebody else to tell you it's a bad day and for you to believe it. That would be tantamount. You would kill your meeting, right? That secret meeting, you just let someone else come in. They came in and they infected your meeting, your temple, your room. So don't need to be mean to anybody. You don't need to, sever their heads or stuff because it's a secret meeting. But find a way to flip the script and help that person, but still get in your subconscious. No, it's a good day. Today is a good day. I'm going to do great things today. So that's the first thing. Guard your thoughts. Super, super important. Don't let anything in that you don't want. This also becomes very difficult. This is where a lot of quote unquote magicians or the people who fail in self-help, they bow out, right? Because it suddenly means, oh crap, I have to turn off the TV. Let's see. My wife's not within earshot right now, but she sometimes watches reality TV, and I don't like it very much.
Yeah, you don't strike me as the kind of person who watches Desperate Housewives or some other show.
Oh my goodness. She watches, I keep looking over because I've got to guard that door, but it's a Beverly Hills, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills or something like that. So she's getting a good chuckle out of it. But I'm like, oh my gosh, these women are so angry and catty sometimes. And so if I have to be downstairs preparing dinner or doing something, either the volume goes very low or I get very good at guarding my thoughts while I'm there. And it's like this outside world is affecting me, but I just keep cooking, cleaning, whatever it is that I'm doing for the time being. I just guard the gates. But somebody else who maybe doesn't have that ability, they don't want to give up their favorite TV shows. It's a relaxation for them. Well, the sad part is if that is contributing to your paradigms, and I'm not saying that everyone who watches mindless TV is being affected that way, but that might be the moment where you say, gosh, I can't watch this. I actually have to go for a walk instead of watching TV to unwind. I can't maybe hang out with some of the friends I had before. And this is where we start to realize, oh my, how badly do you really want this thing that you say you want? Could you rearrange your life? Could you tell your friends about it and say, hey, I'd rather not talk about some of these things anymore. Or if we're going to complain, let's find a solution. There's nothing wrong with venting. We all do it, but do we find a solution right afterwards, or do we dwell in this sorrowful, angry part of you? So I guess that's the first thing I want to mention.
It's so good, so accurate. And I think so many people have discovered the phenomenon that when they no longer have a mutual person to hate, they have no friendship, which is really sad that so many friendships are built on just a mutual dislike of someone else in the office or wherever. And it's really important to try and build friendship or mutual addictions, and not just literal addiction, not literal, but, obvious addictions like drugs. But I know my friendship group is really into a lot of nerdy stuff, but we always make sure that we are not meeting to do this thing we meet to see each other, and then sometimes we do Magic the Gathering or video games or whatever. This is not the friendship exists outside of that activity, but I know for some people, like, their friendships don't exist outside of the activity. So they have this form of escapism, and they just collectively engage with the escapism with other people, which is not a true connection, which sounds like dismissive, but it correlates to what you were saying about, these kind of when we fall into these traps of trying to appease other people, and we have to sometimes make difficult decisions about stepping away from things that are not helpful to where we want to be.
It's so true. And there's always another example that pops in my head, another one I used to tease with the kids, but The Office. I don't know about how it is in the UK, but we have almost like a whole culture based around happy hour. It's apparently a time at the bar where you get reduced price on drinks. You can drink all the what you want, and you go there with your colleagues, and you usually complain, even though it's called happy hour. And no matter what job I worked at, it does not matter. I would always have someone say, hey, you want to come out to happy hour? It's been a hell of a week. We're going to go kick back some drinks and basically complain. And I just would go, but it did. And now, I'm not saying everybody who goes to happy hour does that, but it became this idea of, it was socially acceptable via the media to just basically get drunk, complain, and then that was the end of your week. That's how you would cap off your week. It was acceptable. But in none of my jobs, and I used to tease around with kids, nobody ever came up and said, hey, it's been a hell of a week. You want to go in the alley and do some cocaine? Because that is not socially acceptable.
Yeah,
but what the hell?
We agreed that is not okay, but this other thing is okay.
This other thing is okay. I'm like, guys, let's start to think about this. And again, nothing against booze or anything like that, but it's a very fine line between saying one and the other. So all this acceptance, that perfect. So again, nothing wrong with it. Nothing is good or bad. Just start to think, how are you spending your time, especially if you want to be a writer? The second thing you asked, and this is a little experiment that everyone can do now, how do we work on our imagination? Because that's really what this is. I think all of the greats, they always have quotes about your imagination is everything. It's the ability for you to be what you want to be, not what you are. So we have to work on our imagination. And if we have trouble with mental visualization, one of the things that I like to do is close my eyes, and everyone can do it right now. I would ask everyone to close their eyes and really get into this, because it only actually works if you get into it. So if you don't want to do it now, do it when the podcast is over. But I want you to imagine one of the best moments of your life. And you just close your eyes, and it should be easy, because now you're not thinking about something that hasn't come to pass. You're thinking about something that really happened. Maybe it was something that someone said to you at school and they really built you up. Or maybe it was an award you got, or a moment with a friend when you found out they truly loved you. And I want you to feel everything again. And what someone said, and the weather, what it felt like, and the smells. Maybe it was a time someone cooked a meal for you. And if you're doing that right now, you should probably be getting a little tingling feeling going down the back of your neck, because that was a beautiful time and you're like transported. And I see Joseph had his eyes closed. So did you feel a moment? You've got a smile on your face. Was it good?
I did. It was amazing. I was surprised by what moment popped into my head immediately. And it just took me there. And one was reliving it.
That's the goal. That and usually if I do it in a classroom, the kids that let themselves go, I open my eyes and I look, and you see that. You see the smile come across their face. And you get this almost the neurotransmitters. It's the placebo effect. This moment happened maybe years in the past, but you live it as if it's now. Now, by the same token, I could tell someone, envision the worst thing, and you will see them just, oh, I don't want to do that. And their whole mood and their shoulders hunch in and everything changes about them, right? So don't do that. But for your practice, start working with those. And that will also convince you that this thing is real. Our brain will release neurotransmitters like dopamine. And I guess maybe I could talk about that a little now too, but it'll release this and it's real. And the more you do these thoughts, the greater your visualization will start to become. And the more you try to memorize, but bring up the memories of that time. But it's very difficult. So any activity that's focusing, in magic, a lot of times, we'll always have a candle flickering. Well, could you visualize a candle just close your eyes and just a candle, and just see it flickering. And it's almost like getting into meditations or yogic type of meditations. People can't still their thoughts. And so I think we want to start there at the beginning. Maybe you're great at mental visualization, but a lot of people, the minute they close their minds and they want to think about the future, these thoughts from the day pop in. What do I have to do? What do I do this? What do I do that? And so it's really about learning to calm first. And so I think anything about just visualizing a candle, and when a thought comes into your head, that's okay. Don't judge it. Don't do anything. Just kind of say, okay, I thought about that. Move on. Come back to this candle. Build it that way. So that's one great one. When you're focused on something, try to start focusing just on the thing. For viewers or listeners who eat a meal with a lot of friends and family, that's fine. But maybe if you're just eating and you're by yourself on your lunch break, focus on just the aspect of eating, like your meal. How many times do we actually enjoy a meal and focus on it? I don't feel like we do. Me, myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm cramming something in to get to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just pausing and focusing on focus almost, right? Like, where are my thoughts? That is usually the first step. After you get that step down, and you can have 5 minutes where you could just visualize, because at this moment, if you're new to this, no one wants to sit down and visualize themselves getting an award for a book for 5 damn minutes. That sounds like an eternity. Right? Like,
it is an eternity, right?
It's an eternity. So I would say those little things first, just those kind of guided things. And so I suppose what it would look like in the beginning is maybe get 3 to 5 affirmations that you really, really want. And for each one, you're going to read it. And then you can either visualize during it or right after it. So maybe I say, I'm so excited that fill in the blank. And then you pause and you take a moment to do your visualization for that affirmation. You appreciate it, you feel it, you get the tingles down your neck because it's real. Come back to reality. Look at your, and I'm saying look at your note card. I didn't mention that. I used to keep a note card on me, and I don't have any right now, but it would fit in my my shirt pocket. So I could take it out at any moment and I could read them. And I just had 5 on there. I wouldn't go crazy in the beginning. You don't want a ton. And then move on to your next one. So my next card says, I'm so grateful and thankful that, fill in the blank. And this could be things like you were saying, at conventions, having confidence. So having an affirmation about confidence and seeing yourself shaking the hands of people, talking to people in your mental visualization, even if it's very short and you can only do it short, that's okay. Boom, that's your second one. Then read your third affirmation, do your visualization, appreciate it, see everything, boom, and then you're done. So it's very short. It only needs to take about 5 minutes of your day. This doesn't have to be an hour-long meditation. So I should clear that up too. Yeah. Wake up 5 minutes in the beginning of the day, 5 minutes when you go to sleep. If you can accomplish that, that is huge. And then as you progress, you're going to build your maybe the length of your meditations for longer and longer.
I think that's really helpful for anyone trying to get into this. And we mentioned about kind of using the placebo and visualization to manifest the things we want in life. But you also mentioned at the very start about letting things go. So I wondered if you wanted to talk about that and how we can let go of some of these kind of negative experiences using these techniques.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Now, seeing you got me onto another part. I thought you were going to say, by the same desire that we want something, we want. Sometimes there's this weird paradox again that we talk about. If all you are is focused on the thing, sometimes it seems very elusive.
As you say, treating it as if it's already happened, and actually focusing on other things, like things, for example, as a writer, I think it's really good to focus on your writing craft. And speaking your truth. I know that's a bit of a corny phrase, but I think that's a really important thing. And then in doing that, you will write better books, which then lead to that, all the knock on. So you are doing the affirmations and you are focusing, but you're kind of like almost tricking your brain into burning that in the subconscious.
I like how you said that. Okay, so to cycle it back around again, because people are like, okay, yeah, I've got it. So I say I'm a best-selling author. How the heck does that make me improve my craft? And you know what? Again, sometimes I take these things for granted. So let me just address that, and then we'll get back to how we get rid of some of these negative things.
Yeah.
Good, because we didn't write an affirmation that says, I am so happy that I spend 3 hours a day writing exercises.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's how it actually works. You say this thing in your brain, I'm a best-selling author. I am a best-selling author. I'm so excited that I'm this best-selling author. What happens now is work ends for the day. Maybe it's Friday. You still have a day job, right? Because maybe you're transitioning to you want to be a full-time writer. And then you are presented with this decision. And your coworkers all say, hey, man, we're going to go out to do happy hour. Why don't you come with us? And every single time you say yes, and then suddenly something flips in your brain, and before you even realize it, you say, no, you know what? I actually have to go home and write tonight, but thank you very much for it. You get in the car and you're like, holy shoot, I never once turned that down. Because your brain, what happens is when you've really tricked it and you believe you're a best-selling author, it goes, hey, wait a second. Best-selling authors don't spend their weekends and their nights at the bar. They have to go home and do the writing exercises, and they do the things. So suddenly your brain just starts to say, oh, okay. You just start picking up more books rather than watching TV. You start just doing the writing exercises because you know that's what best-selling authors do. And your brain, you focus on the end, but it slowly goes, okay, because we said you're on autopilot. Well, your brain goes, okay, I have a new thing. Now I'm a best-selling author. So what would a best-selling author do? And you start to study maybe more authors. You listen to more podcasts and you find out what their day looks like. And you find out that their day is actually comprised of, they read every morning for 1 hour. Then they go outside and they do a writing exercise about, they describe all the colors and smells of a scene that they see in their backyard, which also gets you better at visualization, right? But also is good for describing scenes. And so your brain just starts to pick activities without you knowing, just like it used to sabotage you without you knowing. It literally just picks activities that make you the thing you wanted to be, because it says, oh my gosh, I am this thing. I am this. Well, what would this person act? And this can be in any situation. Doesn't even have to be writing. The confidence, you'll find yourself talking to people more. Suddenly, if you say, I'm confident and excited to meet new people, I love meeting new people, you find yourself, a thought pops in your head, oh, that person's lonely. Maybe you should sit with them at the lunch table today. You just walk over and sit down. The thought comes in, and normally you would go, nope, I just sit down at my table. I have lunch the way I have it. It's the most beautiful, magical thing ever. Your brain literally just changes you. It just makes you do a new thing. And it'll give you this split second where that knock will come at the door and you'll have to decide, do I let this happen or do I not? And if you can autopilot it, your brain will just take care of you and you'll not have to worry again, because you're no longer faking to be this thing. You are the thing. You're the thing. And that's kind of how it works.
That's amazing. I think one thing to just add to that slightly as well is that you notice things because you've programmed yourself. Because, as you said, you are the thing. You are, well, I'm a best-selling author. What would a best-selling author do? That writing course advert that you would have just glossed over. You would have just looked over it. You never would have seen it. It would have been unremarkable on your Facebook feed. And the algorithm behind Facebook would have been like, he's not interested in this, we'll not send again. But because you're at the back of your, deep in your subconscious, you have this narrative of like, I am an author. Suddenly that author keyword like catches your attention and you gravitate towards it. And like you said about going over to the person, when you're, oh, I'm not confident, I'm just going to sit alone at my table, you don't even see the other person, the chief editor of some massive publishing house sitting at the table. But when you're like, I am a best-selling author, you're like, oh, there's the editor sitting over there. And so there's like a increased awareness as well as like an increased decision-making ability, I think, that will almost seem as if these things are being created from thin air and being drawn to you. Which is the beauty of magic and there is a debate, isn't there, about do these things actually appear from nothing? Does the universe retcon itself? And so this company's been around for 20 years, but yet it only seemed to exist after I actually started looking for it. Strange, but true.
All right, so everyone's going to tune in next week because I'm going to have a little example. It'll be a short one. It'll be like a 5-minute clip, but it will exactly what you said. There's nothing else for me to add to it because that's it. That is exactly it. You see what was always there. It's just the changes in you. And that is so hermetic and so magical. Perfect. I guess then to come back, what your real question was getting rid of some of maybe the traumas. Is that what you were talking about? How like we've gone through these bad childhood traumas. And I think I alluded to one myself with something bad that happened to me and how I got over it. Because it sounds like a lot of people, this all sounds very, oh, yay, everything's going to be great. But the true nitty gritty is we have these demons, we have these monsters, and they're inside of us and they've happened to us. So it is very easy for me to sit here behind a screen and say, you will all become fantastic and you can do anything you want in life. And meanwhile, they're coming from very destructive home lives, or they're coming from very traumatic experiences. So I alluded to this last time. I will tell you this story for viewers that want to. My other podcast, sometimes we say trigger warning. This is going to be a abduction story. So if you don't want to hear that, you can turn it off. But if you'd like to know how I was able to overcome certain things, I'll go over the story right now. To collect my thoughts, because I have to go back 20 years. I have to go back about 20 years now. And so for me personally, this has nothing to do with writing. I was at a party with a bunch of friends, we had like some alcohol, I remember. And I think I had just gotten a Judas Priest CD or something like that for Christmas. It was like 3 days after Christmas, and we're in an apartment complex. And I literally told my friends, and this is so interesting about the mind, because I used to tell this story, another tangent, and I used to tell it in a very funny way because I wanted people to laugh. And it was a very joking story because I didn't know what else to do because it was a very scary thing. So I told it as a joking story, and I realized that was kind of negative. So I'm just going to try to tell this as even keel as possible. Anyway, I went out to the car to go get this CD that I wanted to share with everyone. And I remember we had another case of beer in the back of my trunk. Now, mind you, I was definitely underage. I was 18 at the time. So this is something we had. I don't remember if someone bought it for us or whatever. However you get alcohol when you're a kid. So I go out to the car and I am basically opening the door, and it's, 8 o'clock at night. I want to say the street lights are on, but it's not a bad area. And there's a person coming up on the sidewalk that I didn't really pay that much attention to, because you're an 18-year-old kid and you're drinking and having fun. And one minute he's on the sidewalk, and the next minute as I turn around from the car, a weapon is being basically shoved into my chest. And I'm just like paralyzed looking at this person. And so I assume they want the car. I'm like, here's the keys to the car. I drop it. I want to give him my wallet. And this particular person says, no, I want you to get into the car. Well, I don't really know what you do. At 18, you think you're very tough. And I thought I was on top of the world. But very quickly, my paradigm shifted. I was not very tough at all. Right. And so I'm like, oh, okay, what else do you say? So I get into the passenger seat because I don't really know what he wants me to do. And he's continually prodding me. He's like, go over the console into the driver's seat. So I'm into the driver's seat. He's got my wallet, my keys. He's thrusting the keys into me. And mind you, this happens all very, very fast. So I've got the car on. I came out for a CD, and now I have a weapon jammed into my ribs, and I'm reversing the car. This is my first car. I've only had a license for a very short period of time, too. Yeah. That also is kind of, I guess, humorous again to the story. So I'm pulling out of this apartment complex, and the guy's like, turn right. So I put on my blinker to turn right. He jabs me again. And I said, right. I go, that's left. So now I got to turn my blinker on and go left. So I'm terrified. I have to make a left-hand turn on 4 lanes of traffic with no light as a newbie driver. Just a horrifying thing overall, right? So we get onto the road, and for those that don't know, I live in a state called Arizona. It is the Southwest. So think about, desert cowboy movies, because when you get out of the city, that is literally what it is still. So we're driving, and I'm driving away from all of my friends of the apartment complex. We're driving, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what do I do? like, and the guy is telling me things like, don't look at me. I killed other people. If you look at me, I'll kill you. And I'm like, okay, all right. What do you do now? So I'm thinking, do I slam on my brakes? And everyone has a million things they want to tell you to do in that instant, right? When you're there, your mind is just going, do I slam on brakes? That's not going to work. Does he have a seatbelt on? No. Can I just get out of the car? So we're stopped at a light. I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. I just get out of the car, like, who cares? But then I saw these movies where you get out of the car, you get hit by a bus. So, I don't want that to happen. That's stupid. So we just keep going and going. And eventually we get off the freeway. And again, like I said, we got off and this, it was by an Indian reservation. So there was a casino on there. And that was basically the only thing that was out there. So we drive past the casino and now we're just in barbed wire and desert. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is getting scarier and scarier. And I don't know how much in depth you want me to go on all this, but I'll just keep telling the story. And
I'm riveted. I'm
riveted. Okay.
Sorry to laugh, but as you
it's
human
totally okay. I used to inject a lot of humor because into it, I would literally make it a joking thing because I wanted to be a storyteller. I saw myself as a storyteller back then. And even though this traumatic thing, I could get everyone to laugh and we could all be okay in it. So don't feel bad at all for the laughing. I promise. So we're driving and eventually at some point he's like, okay, pull over. All right. So I pull over and I remember this was cell phones were just starting to become popular. And I had a cell phone and I had it because something bad happened to me the year before. And I'll tell you that story another time. That was the first time I almost died. Anyway, I had this cell phone on me and he hadn't taken it because it wasn't like nowadays you'd always ask for a cell phone.
Yeah.
But 20 years ago, it was like, maybe not. So he asked me and I had this moment to tell the truth or not. And I said, yeah, I do. Because I didn't know. I figured I'd call my friends, I'd call for help. But what if he found me and got mad and then shot me or did something? So I'm like, okay, I'll give you the phone. And so he takes the phone, he takes my wallet, and we get out of the car. He says, do you have anything else in here? I was like, oh, I got beer in the trunk. He goes, all right, open up the trunk. So I open up the trunk, I give him the beer, and we're now standing in the desert. And he goes, you know what? I dropped your phone. It's in the car. So in the passenger side of the car, he goes, I just need you to go get it for me. So basically, to set the stage, we have my car is sitting in the desert. The passenger door is open and he's pointing in there and saying, hey, just grab your phone real quick. I dropped it. So every mafia movie I have ever seen is going through my mind right now. Yeah. So I'm like bending down, almost on my knees, feeling around on the ground for this phone that he took from me that I don't feel. And I'm trying to keep him in my periphery, trying to find the phone because I'm like, well, this is it. He's just going to shoot me in the back of the head. I know how this ends. All of a sudden, the phone lights up. My friends were calling me, but it was on silent, so it lights up. It had fallen in this slot. So in the door, there's kind of this little spot where maybe you could put like an umbrella or something. I yank it out. I hand it to him. I'd like leap back, so that he's not behind me anymore. And basically he just looked at my wallet, took out my license and said, well, I know where you live. And if you move from this spot, I'm going to kill you and I'll come kill your family. So I said, okay. He got in the car and he drove away. And then I stood in the desert for a while thinking, and I was like, well, shit, this isn't like a movie. No one's going to come save me now. So I have to move. I have to walk. Yeah. And I started walking back through the desert. And it was so scary because there's just that one road that comes through. So every time a car came by, I would cringe on the side because I thought, well, is this him coming back? But it didn't. He didn't. He drove away. And there's a whole nother story to that, what happened to the car. But I walked for miles. And the only things out there was the casino and then a fire department. And so it's like 10:30 at night. I knock on the door of this fire department. You would have been shocked. These firemen open the door and like, what the hell are you doing out here, kid? I was like, well, let me tell you, I've got a story for you. So I go into the police station or the fire department. Anyway, that's the end of the traumatic experience. But this rewired my brain to be not just scared, because I don't think I would ever admit that I was scared, but it changed the way I interacted with people, because I did always start to think that people wanted to get me, I guess, for like, or no, that's not it. I had to prove that I was tough because these bad things happened to me. And so subconsciously it was little things. So if we went out and now we were at a concert or we were, partying, the minute you start to drink a little too much now, probably you drink a little too much because of escapism, because you are kind of scared still, this bad thing happened and you want to forget about it. But when that conscious brain starts to shut off, your traumatic subconscious mind is very alert. And it's like, hey, you remember last time that guy over there, he looks like he's looking at you. Maybe you should act tough to him. So you do stupid things, right? You say something, or you act a certain way, or you maybe are more mean than you'd normally be because you feel you have to assert yourself. No one's ever going to kidnap me again. No one's ever going to do this to me again. I'm going to be this guy. And it starts to make you, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be more assertive, to be more this or that. But we all know when it crosses the line. We all know when you start to act a way, then you look back and go, gosh, I probably ruined a lot of good friendships because I had to push things too far because this trauma got in the way. I probably said other things that I didn't need to do or say. Now, was I the victim in the one instance? But once that instance is done and that experience ended, I was at fault in all the other times, even if I had a reason. So that's why I wanted to tell people that, yes, your bad things that happened to you, it was real, it happened. You deserve to feel the way you want to feel. And it's hard to take that away from someone, right? You don't want to say, oh, your trauma isn't that bad. I had this or that happen to me. You should get over it. But the fact of the matter is, I could have continued going on that path. And I did for a very, very long time. And it's very slow. You chip away at it, and you chip away at it through this stuff, through surrounding yourself with new people, for reminding you that, you know what? The universe isn't out to get you. This is just something that happened. You do the visualizations and you just change it. And slowly you become a different person again. And so while I'll retain the good lessons, whereas I don't want anyone to walk to their car at the end of an evening alone. Let's all walk together. And who cares that you're parked over there? I'll drive you to your car. There's nothing wrong with showing somebody that you care in that way. That's not destructive, right? So that part is good. The other parts, the being fearful all the time, the thinking I have to defend myself 24/7, I had to get rid of those. Yeah. So I changed my paradigm about that. And now my life is better. So if you are struggling, I can't say that I know your trauma, but maybe hearing this one, I think this one is a definitely pretty powerful one. Not everyone can say that they've been abducted, right? And had these horrible things happen and thought they were going to be murdered in a desert. So I know that the subconscious brain registers everything as fear. So my fear is no better or no worse than your fear. So I can at least meet you on that level and say that, hey, I understand what happened to you, kind of, sort of, but I will tell you, if you don't get over it, you could ruin all your future relationships. You could ruin your chance at having a successful, loving, beautiful life. And don't let that happen just because you feel you got the bad deal. It's okay. You did get the bad deal, but you know what? Don't quit the game. Don't fold your hand. You just change the rules. Make your own hand out of it. We have a way when we play cards. You used to be able to give back 2 or 3 cards, right? Say, oh, I'll take 2. And the dealer would give you 2 more cards. And you're just going to make sure that you are not only the one playing the hand, you're also the dealer. And you make sure you deal yourself the best damn cards, and you'll be fine. But it will take a long time. It will be painful. And all I can say is keep going, because you never know when that success is going to be there. And if you stop, you could stop like an inch from the finish line. So don't do that. You're deserved more, you're owed more, and those bad things happen so you could be more. So that is what I will say on how to get rid of those pesky paradigms and insert new ones. And I hope that we've taken everyone from wet dreams all the way to holy cow, you can change your entire life no matter what happened to you.
That's super inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing, and I hope everyone enjoyed that and learned something from it. I know I did, and we will see you in the next episode of the Magical Writing Podcast.
Sounds good.